Chapter 5, Political Participation and Elections. So why do people get involved in the political process anyway? Well, people want to feel their voice is meaningfully heard and paid attention to. But in a presidential election, when you have total vote count of over 150 million, kind of feels your voice doesn't make much noise. In Congress, there are vote counts of tens of millions for big state senators to several 100,000 for House representatives. One voice has a little more oomph, but not a whole lot. People want to feel like they make a difference, like they're taking an active part in their own governments. They do this through political participation. This participation at its most basic level is voting. However, people are coming to the conclusion that their voice doesn't matter anymore, as shown in the 96 elections. In 96, for the first time in American history, fewer than 50% of the people that were eligible to vote actually cast a ballot. In off-year elections, these elections are the ones that roll around for representatives, maybe senator, maybe governor, but not a presidential year. The numbers fall to about 40-odd% voter turnout. The state of Oregon has developed a system of vote by mail. This system, built off of the process of absentee ballots, where people would get their ballot early, cast it through the Postal Service, has been widely used for local elections since the late 80s. In the mid-90s, vote by mail was expanded to statewide offices and then to federal elections. In 2000, Oregon used vote by mail for the very first time in casting votes for president. The turnout for that election in Oregon, 79%. There have been concerns about voter fraud, but the incidence is extremely low, almost to the point of non-existence. In 2020, we had the mass pandemic that really put a wrench into the works. We not only had the coronavirus, but we had a number of states that jumped into mass vote-by-mail programs without giving it a test run, without trying out the system. The biggest problem that these states had, they did not start to open the ballot secrecy envelopes until the ballots had closed. Now, in Oregon, the way it's done is the signatures are verified, the ballots are sorted by precinct, and they are counted in a separate room by machines that are air-gapped. They are not connected to any network. As those results are counted, the results are loaded onto hard drives, which are then taken out and put into the county clerk's safe. The election results come out in Oregon very quickly and very accurately because we don't wait. We're counting votes 3 weeks out, but the county clerks by law have to wait until the polls close, which is 8 o'clock Oregon time, before they hit the, okay, publish this to the website. At higher levels of participation, people will campaign for a cause or a candidate. They'll stick a sign on their lawn or write a check to a committee that supports the same cause they're working for. Even more dedicated, civic-minded folks will contact their representatives about the issue. Used to be in the state of California, the state legislature considered hearing from 20 people on an issue to be a strong position. This in a state of 50 million plus. This was also before the prevalence of emails. In talking to the office of one of our local state representatives, a local representative can expect to receive about 200 emails a day on a regular day, or up to 1,500 emails a day if there's a hot button issue, if a radio host says, okay, now contact your legislature, or if there is an advertising blitz on radio, TV, or direct mail. Then there are those who end up putting their necks out and volunteering for committees, city or county, joining civic groups, or actually putting their names on the ballot. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. The 15th Amendment extended the right to vote to the newly freed Southern slaves. However, racists in the Deep South worked hard to keep blacks from voting, instituting such measures as poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses, which basically was if your grandfather was eligible to vote in the last election, you could vote. After 3 generations, this was changed to if your grandfather was eligible to and actually did vote. The Voter Rights Act worked to end racial discrimination in voting and ensure that the biggest offenders, the racists in the Deep South, would no longer be able to disenfranchise blacks or other minorities. The big question is, why get involved? Why do people get involved, and what keeps people from getting as involved as they otherwise might? Well, it's a thing called political efficacy. Efficacy is the belief that the actions in the political arena will make a difference and that people can, through their actions, influence policy or make a difference. You see a low degree of political efficacy when it comes to national elections and national issues. People say that change can't be made, so it's better not even to try. You see a high degree of political efficacy when it comes to extremely local issues. As a tool of political activity, protesting is a way to get involved in the political process without really having too much personal risk. Yeah, the worst case scenario, it might turn into a riot, or you might get arrested for not dispersing when the police tell you to. But there's relative safety in numbers, and through numbers there is strength. When it comes to more localized issues, the sense of efficacy grows. When Liddell's, now known as The Office, opened up in '97, there were protests. There were angry letters to the editor, and a group vowed to picket the bar until it was closed. The first night, there were about 50 people outside with signs trying to convince people not to go in, but within a week, the crowds were gone and life went on. Then, when the Castle Adult Superstore opened up, people were in arms up again. There was a city council meeting with over 100 people in attendance to decry the presence of this type of establishment in our fair city. They wanted the city council to do something about it. There's legally nothing they could do, but the people came out in force. The Big Three reforms, also called the Oregon Plan, Oregon was the first state to embrace these reforms for electoral process: initiative, referendum, and recall. Now, an initiative is basically citizen-made law. It's a law drafted by citizens, submitted by the people to the people. It bypasses the legislature altogether. You write a proposed law, submit it to the Secretary of State's office, and if the law is constitutionally written, they give you the go-ahead to collect signatures on petitions. You see these people outside Walmart all the time. If you get enough signatures, your initiative gets placed on the ballot for a vote. A referendum is a voter double check. When the legislature feels there's a particularly touchy issue and they want to get the people's final decision, they'll submit the legislation to the electorate. The bill has been passed, it can't take effect until people ratify it. The people in a referendum can also take the bill, quote unquote, from the legislature and demand a referendum on the issue. This will, say that we want to speak on this issue rather than just have the legislature do their own thing. In Oregon, unfortunately, they get around this by adding the emergency clause. Usually laws don't take effect until 90 days after they're signed. But with an emergency clause, the law takes effect even before the ink on the law is dry. The last reform is the recall. If there's an elected official you believe has committed malfeasance in office or general dissatisfaction with the job, you can file a petition for a recall. Collect enough signatures on the recall petition, there's a special election. A vote of confidence, if you will. Now bear in mind that recall of elected officials only happens at the state and local level. You cannot recall your congressman. Probably the most infamous recall effort in modern memory was the successful effort to recall California Governor Gray Davis. Davis's approval rating was in the upper teens, and he made some very unpopular decisions as governor. The recall effort gained steam, support, and enough signatures were collected, 1.35 million across the state, to force the recall. Republicans were supportive of the recall. Democrats were not. 158 candidates paid the $3,500 fee to get their name on the ballot. This included 2 actors, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Gary Coleman, former Major League Baseball commissioner and Olympic chairman Peter Ueberroth, and a porn star, Mary Carey. Democrats decried the whole effort as political in nature and refused to allow a Democrat to be on the ballot. But as the election date grew closer, Democrats realized that Davis was in real serious trouble, so they allowed Cruz Bustamante, the lieutenant governor, as the only official Democrat in the race. Because the cost of the election was going to top $1 million each, the Secretary of State combined the recall ballot with the replacement ballot. First, should Gray Davis be recalled, removed from the governor of office? If Gray Davis is removed, who do you want to have his successor rather than having two separate elections? With Arnold Schwarzenegger as the GOP frontrunner, most other Republicans dropped out of the race and threw their support behind Arnold. The Democrats' strategy was different. No on the recall, yes on Bustamante. Arnold wanted to win the election with more votes for him than there were against the recall, which he felt would solidify his legitimacy in office.